The movie opens in a school where some sort of chaos has just occurred. We see Wendy, the film's protagonist, hiding and crying. Outside, the sounds of indistinct yelling and distant sirens create a tense and alarming atmosphere. In the midst of this turmoil, Dr. Stern arrives at the scene. The aftermath of the violence is evident. A significant hole in the wall, traces of blood, and broken furniture, painting a picture of a recent, intense disturbance. However, the cause of this chaos remains a mystery as the opening scene cuts here. Years later, we see Wendy in a more normal setting. She wakes up beside her husband Lars, begins her day with a routine that includes taking medication. Wendy then looks over a letter, highlighting some unpaid bills, reminding her of the financial strains her family is facing. This motivates her to consider asking for a promotion at work. Meanwhile, Lars also prepares for his day, leaving for work and taking their son, Carl, to school. Wendy's day continues at her workplace, the Chop Heaven Diner, where she is a dedicated but underappreciated employee. At the diner, she is supported in her tasks by Elmar, a coworker who shows empathy towards her. Wendy decides to approach her boss, Angela, to request a promotion. However, her hopes are dashed when Angela rejects her request, suggesting Wendy needs to demonstrate more deserving work to be considered for a promotion. Resigned to her situation, Wendy carries on with her duties. Outside at the garbage bin, Wendy encounters Merrick, a homeless man who begs for food. In a moment that adds a layer of mystery to the narrative, Merrick seems to recognize Wendy. He cryptically tells her, "You're one of us." This statement puzzles Wendy, who is unsure what to make of Merrick's recognition and his mysterious words. The interaction leaves her with more questions than answers, as she tries to dismiss the encounter and carry on with her life. However, Wendy's encounter with Merrick takes a bizarre turn one night as she heads home. Merrick once again approaches her, this time inquiring about her medication. He suggests that Wendy should stop taking her pills to unleash her true self and awaken a hidden superpower. To demonstrate his point, Merrick reveals his own superpower by jumping off a bridge and miraculously surviving being hit by a truck. Wendy, shocked and unsure of how to react to this surreal display, calls emergency services and then quickly heads home, her mind racing with questions and confusion. The next day, Wendy attends an appointment with Dr. Stern, her doctor. During the visit, Dr. Stern decides to double Wendy's medication dosage, unaware of the recent extraordinary events Wendy has witnessed. Back at the diner, Wendy encounters Merrick again, who is begging for food. This time, Merrick explains that he is invincible and cannot be killed, a claim that he had shockingly demonstrated the night before. He hands Wendy a leaflet and cryptically tells her to follow the mermaid, before Angela, Wendy's boss, angrily sends him away. Still reeling from Merrick's revelations, Wendy decides to experiment by not taking her medication. She flushes the pills down the toilet, curious about the effects this might have. At work, Wendy experiences an uncontrolled moment of anger and, to her astonishment, discovers her own super strength when she inadvertently deforms a tray with a mere hit. Realizing the potential consequences of her newfound power, Wendy quickly hides the tray in storage to keep Angela from discovering what happened. That night, as Wendy walks home, she encounters a group of drunk men who usually harass her. This time, however, empowered by her newfound strength, Wendy confronts them and ends up beating them all up, defending herself effectively. The experience is both empowering and unnerving for Wendy, who is still coming to terms with the reality of her superhuman abilities and what they mean for her life. The next day at the diner, Dr. Stern confronts Wendy, reminding her that she missed her medication appointment. Dr. Stern warns Wendy about the consequences of not taking her medication, emphasizing the potential danger to her family and her own life. Meanwhile, Elmar, Wendy's co-worker, is having a difficult lunch with his father and his father's girlfriend. Elmar's father expresses frustration, believing Elmar lacks direction and purpose in his life. Back at the diner, Angela, Wendy's boss, discovers the tray Wendy had previously damaged and confronts her about it. However, Wendy, now aware of her superpowers, uses them to intimidate Angela, successfully scaring her off. After her shift, Wendy follows the clues in the brochure given to her by Merrick, leading her to an abandoned water park named Neptune World, covered with mermaid symbols. There, she discovers that Merrick has been secretly following her, evidenced by photos of her and her family he has taken. Merrick confronts Wendy at the water park, reiterating that they are special humans with superpowers and are not alone in this. He reveals that the medications prescribed by Dr. Stern are not for psychiatric issues but are actually meant to suppress their powers. Merrick urges Wendy to help others like them, insisting that they are her true family. Wendy is initially in denial, insisting she already has a normal family, but the revelation leaves her deeply conflicted. Driven by curiosity and a growing belief in Merrick's words, Wendy decides to investigate further. She breaks into Dr. Stern's office, discovering documents about other patients, including Elmar. She goes to Elmar's house and persuades him to stop taking his medication, suggesting he has superhero potential. Elmar is intrigued by the possibility. Soon after, Wendy begins to embrace her superpowers and demands a promotion from Angela, who, intimidated by Wendy's newfound power, agrees. Elmar, having stopped stopped his medication, discovers his ability to generate electricity, and adopts the persona of Electro Man. He shares his new identity with Wendy, and they spend the night together. In a moment of recklessness, Wendy breaks an ATM to take cash. Elmar confides in Wendy about his mother leaving him, resonating with Wendy, who felt different as a child, and believed her parents left for similar reasons. They end up at a bar, where their night takes a serious turn upon witnessing a girl being harassed by a group of men. Here, Wendy's newfound courage and determination come to the forefront. Resolute to put an end to it, Wendy cleverly lures the men into the restroom. Once inside, she unleashes her superhuman strength and beats them all up. Elmar, who has recently discovered his ability to generate electricity, aids Wendy by electrocuting a man who nearly attacks her. Returning home, Wendy gives Lars the cash she had stolen from the ATM, explaining that it's to prevent their home from being sold by the bank. The following day, Wendy's son, Carl, is delighted to receive a new pair of shoes and sees that their swimming pool, which had been empty due to financial constraints, is now filled with water, thanks to Wendy's newfound ability to afford the necessities. Meanwhile, at the police station, the men from the bar incident are being interrogated. They claim to have been defeated by a woman with extraordinary strength, a story that the police officers find hard to believe. However, the situation takes a turn when Elmar's father intervenes in the interrogation. He allows Dr. Stern to enter the room, and she discreetly turns off the recording equipment, keen to extract more information about the superpowered woman who had overpowered the men. Elsewhere, Wendy brings Elmar to Marek's hideout, where Marek reveals that many individuals like them, labeled as freaks and psychos, are being held in a psychiatric hospital that functions more like a prison. Marek himself had been a prisoner there in the past. Together, the three of them devise a plan to free those individuals. They drive to the hospital, where Wendy distracts and incapacitates a guard, while Elmar cuts off the facility's electricity. However, as they try to escape, other guards nearly catch them. In a desperate move, Elmar uses his powers to electrocute the guards, leaving Wendy and Marek horrified. They argue against using their powers to harm others, but Elmar believes that the world needs to fear them as superpowered beings. Back at home, Wendy faces a confrontation with Lars, who suspects her of having an affair. Wendy dismisses his suspicions, but the strain in their relationship is evident. Elsewhere, Elmar uses his powers to frighten his father's girlfriend, causing her to leave. Later, while Wendy is contemplating in the swimming pool, she is approached by Carl, who is concerned about his parents' relationship. He asks if they are getting a divorce, to which Wendy reassures him that they are not. Soon after, Elmar's actions take a darker turn as he visits Dr. Stern and falsely reports hearing voices from a homeless man at Neptune World's abandoned water park. His deceitful intent is to lead the authorities to capture Marek and have him readmitted to the psychiatric hospital. Later, Elmar crashes Wendy's family's barbecue party, dressed in his Electro-Man uniform. He boldly confesses his love for Wendy. However, Wendy is not receptive to Elmar's advances and asks him to leave. Amidst this chaos, Wendy's personal life becomes increasingly strained. She gets into an intense argument with her husband, Lars, which escalates to the point where she throws Lars off a table in a moment of uncontrolled anger. Shocked by her actions, Wendy leaves the house, overwhelmed by the situation. That night, Elmar has a conversation with his father, attempting to reconcile by asking for a hug. However, in a shocking twist, Elmar unexpectedly electrocutes his father, leaving him unconscious. Wendy, who has been watching from the garden, witnesses this disturbing scene. Before she can react, Elmar turns his powers on her, electrocuting her as well. Wendy regains consciousness in the psychiatric hospital, where she finds herself restrained and under the watchful eye of Dr. Stern. Frustrated and betrayed, Wendy confronts Dr. Stern, accusing her of deceiving her all these years. Dr. Stern justifies her actions, claiming she was protecting Wendy from herself. Wendy then recalls a traumatic incident from her childhood at school, where she unintentionally used her super strength against the principal during an outburst, causing significant damage to the building. Wendy's life in the hospital is marked by routine, medication that suppresses her powers, and encounters with Marek, who is unresponsive to her attempts at communication. One day, Elmar visits Wendy, expressing regret for his previous actions. He brings her a Walkman, knowing it's something she cherishes, but continues to try to persuade her that they are superior beings and should be together. Wendy, however, rejects Elmar's delusions, focusing instead on trying to communicate with the hospital staff, but her efforts are unsuccessful. In the climax of the story, a critical moment unfolds when Elmar unexpectedly causes a blackout at the psychiatric hospital where Wendy is held. Understanding that Elmar is behind this, Wendy seizes the opportunity to escape, along with other patients who have been suppressed and confined due to their superpowers. As Wendy makes her daring escape, Dr. Stern and a team of guards quickly close in on her. Wendy insists that she must stop Elmar, but the guards are determined to restrain her. A fierce confrontation ensues, with Wendy and the other patients fighting back against their captors. In a tense moment, Dr. Stern aims her gun at Wendy. However, in a surprising twist, Marek heroically steps in front of Wendy, taking the bullet meant for her. Tragically, Marek, weakened by the medications that have suppressed his invincibility, submits to the gunshot wound and dies, finally reuniting reuniting with his family in the afterlife. Wendy rushes back home, only to find a horrifying scene. Elmar has trapped Lars and Carl with electric cables, holding them captive. He confronts Wendy with a menacing threat, but Wendy, weakened by her own medication, struggles to fight back. In a critical moment, Lars throws rubber gloves to Wendy, enabling her to safely engage Elmar without fear of being electrocuted. Using the gloves, Wendy unleashes her suppressed power and manages to overpower Elmar, hurling him into the swimming pool. Elmar meets a grim fate, dying to the lethal combination of water and his own electricity. Reunited with her son and husband, Wendy shares a moment of joy and relief. However, she quickly realizes that staying with her family is no longer an option, as the authorities will be searching for her. Resolved to protect her loved ones and her newfound community, Wendy decides to leave her family and join other individuals with superpowers. Her new mission is to liberate more superpowered individuals across the world, embracing her role as a protector and advocate for those like her. The movie concludes with Dr. Stern and the authorities arriving at Wendy's house, only to find Lars and Carl sitting calmly next to the lifeless body of Elmar. The scene underscores the profound changes that have taken place in Wendy's life and sets the stage for her continued journey as a champion for the rights and freedom of people with extraordinary abilities. The story ends with this powerful message about acceptance, self-discovery, and the fight against oppression.